This video is about probability distribution. First, let's look at one example. Say a person is making a bet with his friend. If he wins, he will get $5, and if he loses, he will lose $5. So here we suppose the chance of winning and losing are equal. So we can turn this situation to a probability distribution. We can make a chart like this. Okay, one column is called X, which is the random variable, and the other one is P of X, is the probability of each random variable happening. So in our case, our random variable X has two values. One is winning $5, and the other one is losing $5. So 5 and -5. And the probability of winning $5 is 0.5. And the probability of losing $5 is also 0.5. And this is a probability distribution. A probability needs to satisfy the following conditions. So first, for your X values, they need to be numbers. You can't say, oh, winning or losing over here. You have to assign a number value to each random variable or to your random variables. Okay, so number values. Second condition is for P of X, the sum of all the P of X, or the sum of all the probabilities needs to be 1. So in our case, you have 0.5 plus 0.5 is equal to 1. It also satisfies that condition. In other words, you can say it as the sum of P of X needs to be equal to 1. And the third condition is for each P of X, that number needs to be between 0 and 1. So that means each P of X must be a probability. Right? A probability needs to be between 0 and 1, with 0 or 1 included. Next, we'll talk about how to find the mean and standard deviation of probability distribution. So here are the formulas for mean and standard deviation. So let's start from the mean. So you can tell the mean of a standard deviation is equal to the sum of all the X times the corresponding P of X. So what we need to do is multiply each X with its P of X. So in our case, it will be 5 times 0.5, which is 2.5. Right, for the second X times P of X will be -5 times 0.5, which is -2.5. Right, and add them up. So the sum of X times P of X here is equal to 2.5 plus -2.5. That will give us 0. So the mean of this standard deviation is 0. Okay, that's the mean. Did I say standard deviation? The mean of this probability distribution is equal to 0. Sorry about that. So now let's find the standard deviation of this probability distribution. One thing we need to find is X squared times P of X. So in our case, the first X squared times P of X is 5 squared times 0.5, which is 25 times 0.5, which is 12.5. And the second value is -5 squared times 0.5, which is also 12.5. Okay, so now we want to find the sum of x squared times p of x minus mu squared. Why don't I just write the whole formula? Square root. So to sum up all the x squared times p of x, you have the 12.5 plus 12.5, that's 25. 25, that's the sum, minus mu, which is calculated mu, that's 0. So in our case, that's square root of 25, which is 5. So the standard deviation for this probability distribution is 5. The unit will be the same with the random variable, so we will say $5. We can also use StatCrunch to go through this procedure. So first you can input all the values like this. Now we will go to Stat, Calculators, Custom, values in variable 1, weights in variable 2. So you probably have noticed it's the same procedure for finding the weighted mean. Okay, so you can find here says the mean is 0 and the standard deviation is 5. So we get the same result as we did by hand. Next, we'll talk about expected value. For a probability distribution, the expected value is the same as finding the mean of the probability distribution. And we use the word expected value, at least in the textbook, are usually in the situation of finding the expected value of a bet. For example, for this bet, you will have to pay $5 just to join the bet, and if you win, you will get $40. And I want to find the expected value for this situation. First, we want to make a probability distribution with x and p of x. Oh, I haven't talked about the probability. Let's say if the probability of winning the bet is 10%. And the probability of losing the bet is 90%. Right? Okay. So first, for the x value, if you win, you will win 40 minus the $5 you paid at the beginning, right? So it's $35. And if you lose, you will lose $5. Okay, P of x, when x is $35, it's 10%, which is 0.1. And the probability of losing $5 is 0.9. Now, like I said, the expected value is equal to the mean of this probability distribution. So that is equal to the sum of x times p of x. So x times p of x, here we have 35 times 0.1, that's 3.5, and negative 5 times 0.9, that's negative 4.5, and you add them up, which is at these two values, that's 3.5 plus negative 4.5, that will give you a negative 1. So this means if you keep playing, on average, you will lose $1 for each game you play, because the expected value for each game is negative 1. Now let's look at another example about probability distribution. So this probability distribution is the probability of having 5 kids, and x represent the number of girls you have. So if you have 5 kids, the probability of having 0 girls is 0.031, having 1 girl is 0.156, and so on. So according to this chart, the probability of having, let's say, 2 girls will be, comes from here, right? 0.313. What if I say, what is the probability of having 2 or less girls? I can say 2 or less, or I can say P of x less than or equal to 2, which is equal to the probability of having 0 girls plus the probability of having 1 girl plus the probability of having 2 girls, right? That's less than or equal to 2 girls. So you will add up 0.031, which is from here, plus P of 1, 0.156 plus 0.313. Whatever that number is, will be the probability of having 2 girls or less when having 5 girls. Oh, sorry, when having 5 kids. In this case, P of x less than or equal to 2 is 0.5.